Today, I'm going to talk about GamerGate's star victim, Brianna Wu. She's an activist, ex-game developer, and political strategist who lies about so much of her life, I think she may actually be a skinwalker. And in this video, I want to create a permanent record of some of the biggest lies she tries to sweep under the rug. Okay, so let's start off with education. Wu lied about this for years. As early as 2009, she was making IGN forum posts claiming to have a degree, seemingly to boost the credibility of her opinion on basically any topic, whether this was psychology or copyright law. Then in 2011, Wu makes a post seemingly claiming to have a double major in journalism and political science. This claim evolves over the years until she tells the Boston Globe that she's a graduate and says on a podcast that she's an investigative journalist.
But I'm going to go finish my college degree and I'm going to become a journalist. And I did. I did investigative journalism for a few years. And then,
This was even on her Wikipedia at one point, but it's since been corrected to better reflect the truth. A truth that only came out during a public spat with ex-homosexual pro-pedophile journalist Milo Yiannopoulos, who ran a background check on her. And when he released the results, we all found out that Wu had been completely lying about her degree in investigative journalism, political science, and whatever else she was claiming. Now, you may be thinking, it can't get much more dishonest than faking a degree for years, even lying about it to journalists. However, as we go along, her lies only get crazier and more malicious. So that's the story of Brianna Wu's education. Let's talk about her career history. Brianna Wu was given $200,000 by her adoptive parents to start an animation studio, which never released a single project. However, Brianna Wu claims in a resume published online that the studio was able to patent groundbreaking animation techniques, and that her newspaper comic strip was syndicated in both other newspapers and the Laugh Factory magazine. This all seems to be untrue. Brianna Wu does not have a patent for any animation techniques under any variation of her name, and the Laugh Factory seems to have stopped publication in 1996, 5 years before Brianna Wu claims her strip was published. More recently, Wu has claimed to be a cybersecurity expert during her run for Congress. On that note, let's hear Brianna talk about herself in her campaign ad.
To survive, I had to believe in myself. I didn't come back on my own. I had a lot of help. Eventually, I became a software engineer and cybersecurity expert. In 2010, I founded my own software development studio right here in Massachusetts. We gave good jobs to people that weren't being given a fair shake. Then, in 2014, I found myself in the biggest fight of my life. I was targeted by the alt-right in a hate group known as GamerGate. They targeted women who were just asking to be treated fairly by the tech industry. And when I spoke out against them, they targeted me too, in ways that were so criminal the FBI became involved. They made a Law and Order episode about all of this. They told me that they would murder me. They told me that they would murder my husband, murder my pets. They did everything they could to silence me.
The blatant lie of her being a cybersecurity expert is actually the least interesting part of that clip. Obviously, I checked her LinkedIn and tried to verify this claim. There's no source for it whatsoever. But the more interesting part is how she describes the death threats she received. You see, the videos being shown on screen and the situation being described relate to a series of videos called Deagle Nation, a troll created by comedian Jan Rankowski, who later joined up with $1 Million Extreme, Sam Hyde's comedy group. It consisted of a series of outrageous YouTube sketches in which Jan and his friends portrayed a group of extremist gamers, essentially announcing a jihad on Wu. Now obviously, you'll want to approach this in good faith, and assume that Brianna Wu was genuinely threatened by the videos.
So this is one of the 106 death threats that I've gotten this year. I'm going to play it for you. I want to tell you this is pretty shocking.
This is the Skull's Manifesto. My crew will fuck take care of the fucking limited gaming issue that you've all been hearing about on the gamer sites. We're gonna deal with this vigilante style, basically. I've pretty much unchained the beast within. I'm gonna go bloodthirsty on these fascists and
Even if they seem absurd and obviously joking by modern standards. However, what if I told you that when Brianna Wu says the FBI became involved, what she means is that they determined it was a joke at the time. And not just the FBI, but journalists too. Despite this, Brianna has willed this out at every opportunity as her key example of harassment.
People People actually use those diagrams in my house to plan mass shootings of me and my family and my dogs, and would send that to me with things like, we're going to sneak in through here, we're going to execute Crash in this room, and if you're asleep here, we're going to shoot you with this pistol. Like, there was some really sick shit that went on back then. And from there, one of those nut jobs started sending me graphic stories every single day explaining how they were going to come through my house and execute me, execute my dogs, execute my husband, like really graphic stories, like talking about how they were going to get me and cut the skin off my body. He claimed he had crashed his car on the way to my house. It's the most terrifying thing I've ever seen, where he swears he's gonna deliver justice to me.
Fuck you to Brianna Wu for being a hates gaming. Brianna Wu is a fucking homosexual motherfucker, and I would dispense elite justice on her soul with a single knife wound.
I don't think any reasonable person would take these as credible threats, and the video Wu is referring to is a video where Jace claims that Brianna tampered with his brakes in an assassination attempt. Obviously, I'm assuming that Brianna did not try to assassinate Jace Connors, and as such would know that this video was a joke. There's so much more that could be said about Deagle Nation, however that's outside of the scope of this video, so let's move on to another huge lie Brianna told during Gamergate and still repeats to this day.
Bro, YouTube, this is Jace right here, and this is my fucking car, or my mom's car, that when I was street racing, could not perform! Couldn't fucking perform on the road, and now the bitch shit is crashed, okay? I can't even kick the windshield because it's made of bullshit plastic from shit. Because I wasn't even fucking drunk. I was just racing, you know, like normal. I was trying to street race in the fucking highway. And look at this bullshit. Look at this shit. Totally useless. I hit and I fucking rolled on the ice. Fucking rolled down here. And now look at this piece of shit.
Throughout his battle with cancer and past his death, TotalBiscuit, a gaming YouTuber, was the victim of a smear campaign.
I tweeted some of the people involved. I would get avalanche with people defending this behavior. And the truth is, it's not a mission priority to the men that have a large audience in this field. TotalBiscuit is someone who's very popular in this realm. He's, as transphobic and sexist and horrible as someone can be. And he has massive.
Now, I don't want to spend a huge amount of time on this, but there was absolutely no evidence for this claim, and plenty to the contrary. TotalBiscuit kicked an attendee out of one of his events for asking the question, "Are traps gay?" at a panel.
Are traps gay?
What? I'm not offended by it. I'm not transgender.
Yeah.
But there are people who are and were,
Right.
and were upset by it.
While that incident took place after Brianna's initial claim, this is something that Brianna has repeated until 2023. When TotalBiscuit died, I made the decision to just say nothing, despite the way he targeted me. I thought I was being decent. What I see clearly now is those of us that said nothing allowed history to whitewash a fairly horrific history of extreme harassment. The only thing I think this could possibly be referring to is when TotalBiscuit said, "I am very much fucking done with pretending that Brianna Wu has anything worthwhile to say, and is not a colossal, attention-seeking hypocrite." And the only thing this proves is that TotalBiscuit literally never missed. Regardless, Brianna Wu allegedly used this in a PowerPoint presentation she gave displaying death threats. Now is also probably a good time to introduce Wu's game, Revolution 60. Now there's a whole bunch of lies involved in this game. For one, Brianna claimed to have made music when it was actually royalty-free. But the biggest lie about Revolution 60 is that it's good. See, Brianna is under the delusion that this game is comparable to Mass Effect or Heavy Rain. Though Brianna wouldn't let reality get in the way of her constructing insane lies about her game development studio, saying they were on the brink of creating holodeck technology. The only thing stopping them was Brianna's strong moral compass, which led her to running for Congress instead.
Real with you about this? It was so hard for me to make this decision because I have worked 80-hour weeks since 2010 building up my game studio. And we were in the middle of a huge expansion into VR and AR. In some ways, Revolution 60 was my line in the dirt telling the industry to take me seriously. Like, look, I can deliver a quality game. Look at this. Because we were working on some of the coolest Mass Effect technology you'll ever see. Like, stuff that really pushes this to the holodeck.
The story of an impoverished start to Giant Space Cat also seems to be a complete fabrication. According to an article about Brianna Wu's involvement in GamerGate, Brianna and Frank were living out of a house that was given to them for free by Frank's uncle. Obviously, when you add this on top of all the other circumstances of Wu's upbringing, such as her parents being big Republican donors that got her into politics at a young age, and we'll get back to that later, as well as $200,000 we already covered for an animation studio, you gain a different perspective than the one Wu would like to sell you.
You know, there were so many months I sat there and ate red beans and rice, just 3 meals a day for months on end to pay my team. So, my family, who
I remember that tweet.
exceptionally cruel to me, giving them credit for anything that's happened, in my professional life in the last 10 years. It pisses me off. It's hitting on some trauma. I think y'all probably...
Okay, look, I get it. Look,
Now, what Adam friended is the sort of 70 IQ cuck who's not going to call that bullshit when it's being fed to him. It needs to be stated that even disregarding all of the experiences, chances at education, and a visit to the same rehab as Tiger Woods, Brianna Wu's political career is likely built off the backs of the connections she made in Washington, also thanks to her parents. Brianna seems to have spent most of her youth rubber banding backwards and forwards between Washington and Mississippi, including partying with Chelsea Manning pre-transition.
Chelsea doesn't mind me talking about this, but we were living in DC at the same time and hitting the same clubs. This is before she transitioned, and we knew each other a bit back then, so I was a damn mess back then. Chelsea Manning, so yeah.
This is probably a good segue into Brianna's broader involvement in politics, trans activism, and her association with Keffals. Similarly to how she treated TotalBiscuit, Brianna has suggested that well-known journalist Jesse Singal, who has gained prominence for his skeptical perspective on modern trans healthcare, was actually a dishonest reporter and harasser of trans women. Jesse's attempted numerous times to have Wu substantiate these allegations, even putting money up for offer. However, about a month ago, Brianna dodged reaffirming these claims and instead made new attacks against Jesse, saying that he was a bad reporter with sourcing issues who tried to get her fired.
I've worked with Jesse a lot, actually. I was one of his main contacts during GamerGate. I have my own impression of his skill as a reporter, as someone who's worked with hundreds of reporters over my career. And it's not good, to be honest with you. I have some extreme concerns about the way that he assessed that the Atlantic article on trans children. I think he's a sloppy person. I think he takes a lot of shortcuts, and I think he chooses sources that align with the story he wants to tell. The way Jesse handles sourcing is going to be a major scandal for him. I don't know when it's going to be, but if someone ends up wanting to write that story, call me up. I'll point you to a whole bunch of people. You should look into how he sources stuff. But here's the thing. If I go up against Jesse Singal today by myself, it'll be a Twitter shit show for a few days, and his horrible audience will go after me and won't get us anywhere. That's not what I'm interested in. And there's a reason Jesse gets his paycheck from Patreon and not the New York Times. So that is my statement by that. It's very reasonable. Again, I say Jesse has tried to get me fired for criticizing him. And his nutjob audience has never, they don't care about this double standard.
Now forgive me for not trusting Brianna Wu's interpretation of what makes a good reporter after she's had many blatant lies published by actual reporters who are paid by legacy media companies. Not just that, but she uses the same tired old GamerGate harassment lines against every enemy she comes into contact with, even pulling it out against Jesse Singal here. Regardless, Jesse laid out his perspective in a Reddit post. It was 2020. I got an email from Rebellion Pack with Brianna Wu's name on it. I thought this was just Wu's own personal pack. She has run for Congress in my home state, and didn't know Cenk Uygur had any association with it. Maybe I was having a bad day or something, but I was annoyed at being on this list, given that Brianna had sent me creepy notes threatening my career if I didn't change my ways with regard to writing about youth gender dysphoria. So I quickly fired off an angry reply asking to be taken off. I figured I was sending it to one of Wu's staffers, as you can see from my use of third person, though I now see the email address was to Wu herself. Wu replied to my email angrily disputing that she'd threatened my career. We went back and forth for a few rounds of a pointless email fight, and that was that. At no point did I ever have any idea that Cenk Uygur had anything to do with this pack, or that he had any power over Brianna Wu. It turns out they worked together on the pack, or confounded it, or some shit. I did not know this and do not care. Years later, Brianna has recast this as me contacting Cenk Uygur to try and get her fired. So in this view, I sent an angry email to Brianna Wu herself, thinking it was one of Wu's staffers, that didn't mention Cenk or mention any desire to get her fired, but what I was really trying to do was get Cenk Uygur to fire her. I just tweeted at Cenk and gave him full permission to share any email he has in his possession where I tried to get Brianna Wu fired. Late addition, forgot to mention that Wu also claims that I interviewed her for an hour for my detransition article and didn't use any of it. I do not remember interviewing her, though it's possible I did. If I interviewed her and I didn't use any of that, it happens a lot in magazine journalism. I interviewed a number of people for that article whose quotes didn't make the cut. I can't answer this one dispositively because I only have a partial archive of my New York Mag emails. Brianna just seems to be making up lies about Jesse, or refusing to confront him or present any evidence. But while we're on the topic of her trans activism, it's worth noting her strong support of Keffals. Until the release of the Some Ordinary Gamers video, and shortly after, Brianna was one of Keffals' biggest defenders. This alone should be a damning condemnation. People like Brianna, who saw everything Keffals was doing and supported her full-throatedly, should not be allowed to worm away when the pressure's too high. Keffals made absolutely no secret about her approval of DIY HRT and partnership with apparent bank robber Bob Posting's DIY HRT directory.
The directory was created by an individual known as Bob Posting, or Chloe. Chloe and Clara have a long history of friendship together. Chloe thanked Keffals for her sponsorship and even got brought on stream to promote the site. She would reply to Clara on Twitter, 1,000 miners on HRT. Her association sparked backlash after people began to notice her bizarre fixation on secretly sending HRT to miners. I've unironically helped like a half a dozen miners acquire bathtub estrogen. No one tell them I've held more than one minor order. I don't groom children, I just show dozens of kids every week how to buy bathtub estrogen with cryptocurrency, and how to hide it from their parents. What are you talking about?
Something Brianna only gained the good sense to disavow on a stream with Mutahar, Keemstar, and Nick Diorio, where she was pressed for several hours. Brianna would have you believe she's simply showing compassion for an addict by continuing to deflect for Keffals.
This on the show before, but yeah, I've been sober for 20 years. You know, I think it was 2002 that 2002 or 2003 I went into rehab for poly addiction. I was an alcoholic. I did street drugs. I did Xanax. I did, Ambien. I did anything I can get my hands on, which is how poly addiction works. And I beat the odds. I've been sober for 20 years. So yeah, I take a lot of pride in that. So, especially as Keffals was dealing with her own trip through rehab.
So did you kind of see yourself in Keffals a little bit? Is that kind of what's going on? You see like a young gal activist who's under a deluge of bullshit from a whole bunch of people, and you're like, oh snap, it's a smaller version of me.
100%. And I think something I've been willing to do to this point is kind of defend her in the public eye more and more. And we have the stream that I think a lot of people really misunderstand Keffals. I genuinely do. Keffals is traumatized from the things that have happened to her in the last few years. She's not faking that, okay?
But it's hard to believe
hold
that.
On. I want to finish my thought. And
oh God,
it causes her to make decisions that a lot of people around her are encouraging her to make different decisions, okay? And I'm going to be honest. I see a lot of myself.
He potentially stole a lot of money. Come on. He potentially stole a lot of money.
Please.
When I think I was 22, I found myself in rehab in the exact same way Keffals did. Poly addiction. I was a mess. And I think all the time, what if for that period of my life, social media had been around or I had been a YouTube star? Holy crap. I mean, I'm not justifying everything that she's done. I'm saying it is context. She's not lying about being traumatized by what happened with the police showing up to her house. That really hurt her.
No, but she is lying about the money. And that's a really big deal.
And she did lie about the cops.
No,
she lied.
But we can take a look at her tweets at the time. Brianna says, Keffals, I donated to your fund, and I give you permission to spend all the money on cocaine. So not only did Brianna not care about the allegations of scamming, but she was also essentially enabling Keffals in public. However, that's not the only way Brianna supported or defended Keffals, with her emphatically tweeting, I don't feel scammed, in response to the ongoing discussion about Keffals' mismanagement of the $100,000 at the time. Wu was also a huge cheerleader of Destiny's Twitch ban, despite later doing Keffals a massive favour in the form of setting up a meeting with Vosh and Destiny to bury the hatchet because it's an election year. Now, despite what I see as a sickening display of knee-bending of Destiny here, I will give him credit that he's kept his distance from these losers in public, and I'll probably just defer to his most recent statements on Anna Kasparian.
Did you follow the Keffals stuff at all?
Yeah, I forgot to reiterate how little credit any of these people deserve for calling Keffals out. I hated it. My biggest pet peeve in the fucking world is people collecting credit on both sides of an issue. Vosh used to do this all the time. So you get to side with somebody and virtue signal hard to your audience and collect all the virtue from that. And then once it becomes like advantageous to do so, later on you can correct the record and then you get more virtue points for that. And it's like, wait, there was plenty of good evidence back at the time. So one man even wrote a manifesto on it for why Keffals shouldn't have been trusted. And none of them gave a fuck then. And now they're all getting credit for coming onto this story, what, like 2 years late? Cringe.
And when it comes to Vosh, despite Brianna's strong anti-Lolly stance, she's essentially excused Vosh's actions and run defense for him. On the topic of Keffals, Brianna expressed huge support for the Drop Kiwi Farms campaign, believing herself to be one of their many victims. One small problem is that during the previously mentioned stream with Mutahar, Wu was seemingly completely unaware of the forum's rules or activities.
Like, I think that, if you want to call someone the T word or some slurs online, tough shit. That's a free speech issue. If you're repeatedly telling someone in graphic terms how you are going to murder them, I actually think there should be some law enforcement out there that should look at that, see if there's a criminal case and pursue it. I think if you introduced consequences into the equation for the most extreme cases, I think that would do a lot of good here. So, it's really frustrating that activists are put in this place of like trying to shut down a website because the fucking FBI can't be bothered to hire 100 agents to do this, right?
Mm-hmm. I think, but I think like at the core of it, one of the big concerns, again, and I'll reiterate, is like Kiwi Farms. Look, I don't agree with whatever the fuck they're doing over there. Condemned, obviously. Null, he has a situation in place, and Null's not a perfect individual, but it's a website that has far more rules about that extreme end that we're talking about, right? The extreme end of threats.
Sure.
Whole don't touch the cow mentality, so to speak, whatever happens over there. But there are websites like Website Zero, for instance, where Vile was operating, right? Where Vile was putting out information. Vile, who actually commits illegal actions like using federal agents, that should be the website targeted. And it's not as if the FBI can't do anything. They literally arrested a couple of their operators.
Regardless of what you think of Kiwi Farms, it is a US legal site. Cloudflare had been referred to as the emergency services of the internet, providing the vast majority of sites with protection against illegal DDoS attacks. The idea that Brianna would sign on to a completely unjustified attack on the fundamental principles of a free and open internet, not due to any informed or educated opinion on the matter, but due to a personal spite against the website, is honestly reprehensible. This is yet another example of the same behavior she showed in GamerGate, the same behavior she showed towards Destiny's ban. There's no honest reflection on what's an acceptable tactic or how to take accountability. She simply changes team when it benefits her and expects you all to go along with it. And if that wasn't crazy enough, Brianna still seems to lean on the $1 Million Extreme skit to justify her attacks on Kiwi Farms. Regardless, looking more broadly at Brianna's trans activism, many will know she's tried to take a stand against the excesses of online trans activism. This extends to her private conversations, as a group chat of problematic transsexuals was leaked by leftist streamer President Sunday, where she expressed frustrations at the difficulty she faces due to these freaks, and referred to ex-TYT journalist Benny as a transvestite. She would later grovel, saying she doesn't engage in that toxicity anymore, only for some more group chat logs to be leaked months later, in which she was doing the same thing with the same people. Except this time, in typical Brianna Wu fashion, she decided to spurg out, DM the person she was shit-talking, and start threatening them too. So Brianna is more than happy to throw other trans people under the bus if they don't meet her standards for optics. Yet she doesn't exactly keep herself clean.
I would say this. I think it is, I think you should not talk to minors in a way that implies anything sexual. I do have to say, so this is one of my issues with Mutahar's video, that if you spend any time in the trans community, it's just an irreverent place. It just is. It's a really incredibly dark sense of humor. We had a friend the other day that was thinking about committing suicide, and we were joking with her because she transitioned that we would like tell people that she was non-binary if she committed suicide, which is a terrible thing to say, but it's just this like dark humor that pervades the trans community. It's like people that have been to war,
right? Like there's
I'm in the commentary community. Dark humor is all throughout it. I get
100%. So I think like one of the things that was ironic watching Mudahar's videos, he's taking all of these comments so seriously, and I'm just like, I hear what you're saying. Ideally, you should not talk to minors like that, but this just is the community. And like, I'm 46 and I still talk, I talk like this.
Thanks to some leaks of DMs between Brianna Wu and Jesse Gender, we know that Brianna has very radical beliefs in private, but will only express moderate ones in public. This means that, despite agreeing with many of the excesses of trans activism, Brianna is simply throwing them under the bus in furtherance of her own political career. Further, despite Brianna claiming that she avoids lawsuits, she's been dragged into numerous public battles with previously mentioned President Sunday, going so far as to float the idea of getting him banned from social media platforms.
I think we agree probably that like Discord stepping in or YouTube stepping in and like parting ways with the creator, I think this gets used way too often. But at the same time, it's not like the community has a really good mechanism to like get rid of bad actors, right? Like someone who, like Sunday, who I think is a bad actor. I mean, you can go on there and confront him and that's good. But I mean, how does a community like the streaming community like police itself? It's really, really hard when everything gets turned into content.
And then threatening a defamation lawsuit when he characterized this as calling for his ban. So just to wrap up here, you should not allow people like Wu to placate you with empty apologies and messages of bridge building. There's no bridge to be built with someone who has a long history of reprehensible behavior which they have never accounted or even really stopped engaging in. The US election is not the be-all and end-all. It's not a tool that you can use to deflect from any valid criticism of you and your friends. And Wu's impact on it will not even be felt, let alone remembered. Trump being on the ballot is not a good reason for Brianna Wu to escape the fact she watched and supported every terrible action Keffals took.